Hi, I'm Tara Ashmore. Sorry, I am not feeling well, so bear with me. I chose the girl with the Dargon Tattoo, the 2009, and this is from Sweden. So, yay. Okay, so the main characters that I am focusing on is Elizabeth. She's a 24-year-old. She's a hacker. And then we have Michael. He is a investigative journalist. And we have Harriet. Harriet is the murder victim, basically, in the whole story. She died there 40 years ago, and they don't know why or how, so they're investigating. We're also going to have Godfrey and Martin, and that is Harriet's father and Harriet's brother involved as well. And we'll meet them as we go. So I chose these three theories to talk about. The patriarchy theory is about dominance, how men are dominant over females. They do not think that they are a human being. They think they're property, animals. They can pretty much do whatever they want because they're property. In this one, a lot of times people think that because sometimes there's not physical harm like beating, there can be emotional abuse, there can be stuff that's just not seen, that it's not really considered abuse, when we know from studies that kids between 1 and 13, when they're in these type of situations where they have been maltreated and they've been emotionally abused, their brain structure changes. Even if they're sexually assaulted or just child violence, all that, any type of violence, their brain structure changes. And then we have the social learning theory, which is basically it's taught. They are in a family that maybe have abuse and they see this behavior repeated over and over again, and so they just associate it with normal behavior. One of the myths of this one is that normally it's men that do it to girls. However, it can be anybody. Anybody can be in these situations. Anybody can be the abuser and anybody can be the abused. The exchange theory. This one is where the people want something, and so they kind of reward versus punishment. A lot of times for this one, people always think that it's usually like poor people, middle class, and not rich people. But there again, abuse can happen no matter your economic status, your sexual status, anything. It can happen to anybody. Okay, so technically there are 4 abusers in the movie. However, the 2 that I'm going to focus on right now are going to be Elizabeth and Harriet's father. Elizabeth's father is dominant, angry, and abuses her mom. Harriet's father is dominant, alcoholic, miserable, and he abuses her mom, her brother, her, and others. He is an equal opportunity. We run into, in the fathers, especially Harriet's father, we notice that he favors one child over the other. Nobody actually reports it. Neither Harriet nor Elizabeth report it. And in Harriet and Godfrey one, which is her father, they end up actually having a sibling abuse as well. So both girls end up having PTSD. Elizabeth's the one that actually self-harmed. She ends up getting tattoos. She doesn't cut herself, but she does the piercings and all that. Coping skills, Elizabeth smokes like a chimney whenever she just starts freaking out or starts trying to figure stuff out. That's her coping skill, and so is sex. And then when we have dealing with problems, both her and Harriet run away. They don't really deal with problems, they run away, and then they kind of form a plan, and then they come back to it. They're both, they just don't really like to be confrontational. Sleep sleep issues, definitely a problem for both of them. So this theory is seen throughout the entire movie, actually. And this one is basically how the men think that they are basically in charge and they have the right to do whatever they please because that's just their right. It's kind of sad, especially on this one, because Harriet is super smart. She figures out that her dad's doing murders, and she also figures out that her brother is also helping, and he is also committing these as well, which runs us into the murders that her father does. These are religious type murders. He kills only Jews, and he kills them using only the Bible verses. Godfrey has his son help with the one that was tortured in the barn. And that's his first actual kill. And that's where he really learns his love for kill, Martin does. What I didn't know was that the minority of children that are maltreated occurs among families caught up in this cycle of child abuse and neglect. Usually, or specifically, if their mothers have had abuse. So if their mother's abused, they're usually higher likely to be caught up in this type of cycle of neglect, abuse, and so on. Social learning theory. The man that's standing in the middle, that's Martin. He learns, obviously, from his dad about abuse and sexual violence. He ends up being in a situation where him and his father rape and abuse his sister, so it ends up turning into sibling aggression, which, as we all know, is one of the most common forms of family violence. And because he's an older sibling, male, she is a second child, female, it also ups that as well. He definitely loved to demonstrate power and control, because once he loses Harriet from the scene, he ends up going after more people, females. And you can really, really see this power and demonstrated of the power and control in the last scene before he ends up dying, is with our journalist, because he ends up capturing him and he ends up trying to kill him in the same way he's killed all the other females. And you can tell from that conversation and the way he does everything that it is truly about power and has nothing to do with sex. It's kind of crazy how well that scene plays out. And then we have Elizabeth. So Elizabeth, as I said earlier, she does not like confrontation. However, she does flip that when it comes to demonstrating power and control. If you try to take that away from her, she will fight back. And we're going to see that in our next one. Okay. Elizabeth has, I feel like, prey written on her forehead, which is kind of funny because I found a UK study that was done in 2016 that said that if you were abused as a child, you have a 51% chance to be abused as an adult. And we actually kind of see this play out in the movie. Elizabeth is walking home from something. I can't remember what she's walking home from, and she ends up getting jumped. She ends up getting beat, and it's when I think they break her computer is when she kind of loses it and she attacks them. But by then she's already bloody, bleeding, and everything. So she ends up having to buy a new computer, and this is where we get into the exchange theory. She has money, but she is not old enough to take care of it, so she has to have a guardian that does this for her. And this guardian is a sadist. He's trash. Worst human being as well. Like, I don't know what was going on with this movie. But he sexually assaults her to get money for her computer, which isn't enough. So she decides that she is going to go back and get abused again. But this time she tapes it. And then she walks back, bloody, abused, all that stuff. And then she goes back. And as you can see, he's laying on the floor. She tasers him and she begins her revenge. And she basically tells him that in this exchange this time, he is going to do what she said, or he's going to end up in jail. And so she ends up writing sadist pig on him with a tattoo. And she does some other stuff, which is not nice, but I'm not here to say if it's right or wrong, but I wasn't mad about it. To get what she needs. And what she needs is access to her money and him to mind his business and never talk to her again. And that's what she does. So the other exchange theory that we also see is with Harriet. So you go through this whole movie thinking that Harriet is dead, and you come to find out at the end that she's not. That her and her cousin faked her death to get her out of the situation and got her out to a different country, and she's actually alive. And so at the end, she comes back and she gets to reunite with her grandfather, and her brother ends up in jail. Or actually, no, her brother ends up dead. My bad. And that's usually how it ends. So, happy ending, I guess. This is my citations. If you guys have any questions, just let me know. And I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.